Thanks for that. It was a fun journey to go on. I think the recording is going to be epic. It was literally just you.
I don't know what was happening.
You looked very serious and then very not serious, and it was like very quickly.
The two faces.
What up, Backseats?
Morning, guys.
How are we doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, pumped to chat. So you're the co-founder of Chonks, which is a fully on-chain PFP project with swappable traits. It's done. I checked, and I think my math's right, $4 million plus in volume over the last maybe 6 months since it's been out, and also just a cracked Solidity dev that has helped launch over 18 projects, including projects for Sotheby's, Art Blocks, Checks, a bunch of other big names. I've also tried to pull you into C-Clip projects many times, so highly recommend you as a dev. But yeah,
we almost worked on Enjoy together.
We did almost work on Enjoy together. Yeah.
Let's go.
But yeah, let's get into Chonks a little bit. So do you want to just tell us about what Chonks is and what makes it unique as a PFP project?
Yeah, so Chonks is it's a ERC 721, but it is really the first project to go deep on the ERC 6551 pseudo standard. It's still in review. So what that means in normal people speak is your Chonks body token, normal NFT, actually has a wallet, which we call a backpack. Technically, it's called a token bound account. And inside of that are all of the ERC 721 trait tokens. So my little guy that you can see on the screen, right? Like the body is just the body. They're really pretty much fungible, aside from the ID, if you want a lower one or a higher one or whatever. And then as you collect traits, those actually live and are tradable inside of your backpack. So like Backseats.eth owns this guy. And then inside of that wallet, each chonk also has a ENS subdomain. So this is like 1.chonks.base.eth. So you don't actually have to remember the address of your backpack to like send anything to it. And you can send ETH to that backpack. You can send other traits. And then on our site, we have a whole experience where you can buy and sell traits. You can dress them up. We have a 2D and 3D studio where you can design new traits and eventually make money off of those. And then we have a little 3D playground where you can load this guy in and run around like a little platformer that we've built as a proof of concept. And it's a lot of fun.
So what was your kind of broader motivation for building this project? Obviously, there's a bunch of interesting kind of technical stuff under the hoods, but it was also, you built it, I think it was maybe January or late last year. So it was the heart of the NFT bear. No one was paying attention to PFP. So this clearly wasn't like an opportunistic move to go build this project. So curious why you did.
Yeah, I mean, it started with, it had sort of been in the works for about 2 years. It started with an interest in the ERC 998 standard, which came out in 2018. And it was a similar thing, like NFTs could own other NFTs. And it was really clunky. And I wanted to rewrite it, but I never got around to rewriting it. So this had just sort of been in the works, and I was working on a different project with two friends, Andrew Wang and Psyduck. And this was like a proof of concept that we had been kicking around. And the first time I saw Chonks, I was like, I want to 3D print one and I want to put it on my desk. And I I couldn't get religion around it, but like I loved it. So I just kept iterating with my friend Dean, who's an awesome pixel artist from New Zealand, Dean Harvey, who I've worked with a bunch. And we sort of did the first set of traits and things. And then I pulled Marca in, and we really like dove deep on the contracts. And the goal is just to be a really like non-crypto legible project, like you guys were talking about before I joined. Like, next step is like we built our own marketplace for this. Next step is like put it into Farcaster and Base, like have Apple Pay. I'm rewriting the marketplace to use USDC. Just like have this be like a normal like kind of Neopets or Club Penguin or whatever, where it's just like you don't need to know anything about crypto. It's just like a digital friend. You can collect traits. You can dress them up. You can play games. It's all open source, and it's all fully on chain. So like all those toys that like, as long as Coinbase doesn't go out of business. So like all those toys that like you had as a kid and you would love to like play with again, like hopefully like these little guys like just exist, and one day you can just like pull them up again and play with them. But for now it's just like keep shipping traits and do like, interesting technical things, but have it be very legible to like a normal person who's just like in the Chonk studio drawing, right? And they're not thinking about like the things on the back end that go into like actually delivering this onto your phone. It's just like, I'm having fun.
I mean, there was a whole few months, I think, where ERC 65551 was the rage. Every NFT is going to have a wallet, and this is, I guess, frankly, the first time I've heard it brought up in a long time.
Yep.
Are you like maybe can you dive into a little bit about what you see that type of functionality unlocking, either through Chonks or more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a awesome standard because there's so much you can do with it. Like you think about, you put out every seed club, every podcast, every 11 a.m. as an NFT. Like if you collect all of those, like what we do is like, we've done this a couple times with like a couple different artists. We've done it a couple times with base paint, where like if you put a base paint canvas in your, which is a normal NFT, in your Chonks wallet, that will allow you to unlock a new trait that comes from us. So around like fandom, and I love Sergito from Meebits talking about NFTs and fandom, and how those overlap. Like the more you put in your backpack, the more opportunities we have to reward you. And I think one of the reasons that the 6551 standard hasn't really taken off is it's not tradable in OpenSea. So we built our own marketplace. You can trade the bodies, but there's some security issues with every one of these projects, not just Chonks, around trading the things in the backpack, because technically the seller could move everything out of the backpack in the transaction right before yours goes through. So with our marketplace, you're safe from all of that. And so we've actually helped the team behind that just to flesh out a bunch of kind of the issues that they were stuck on here. Just as it pertains to like when you move something inside of the wallet, kind of or inside of the backpack, how should the token, the umbrella token that holds it behave in the marketplace, things like that, because there's a whole bunch of like considerations there. So like it's not as easy to use, but we just kept grinding through it.
I'm curious, like how you generally kind of think about, you obviously come from a very technical perspective, and I think with all the projects you've built, they've all had some pretty interesting and novel technical implementation. So how you balance kind of that technical focus and intrigue with like the need for marketability in these projects you work on? Because I think you could kind of obfuscate this kind of backpack feature in the UI and make it feel like it works the same way. So I guess like why even do it?
I think because there's like the thing that's always fascinated me about NFTs is like the feeling of collecting stuff, and when it gets really technical, you just lose kind of everyone, right? But there's a lot of really interesting things that you can do that require really technical implementation, but you shouldn't get, I have a strong philosophy, like you shouldn't get hung up on that, because it just makes it illegible to like a larger crypto audience. So we've done all of this work to try to distill everything in as simple as possible terms. So like, we go from like a token bound account, then we call it a backpack, then we put an ENS address on top of it. And all you have to remember is your Chonks ID, and then everyone is the same, that.chonks.base.eth. And you can send like, go to Banker on Twitter and be like, Banker, send 0.1 ETH to, this address, and like, boom, it's done. Right. And so like, I love the idea that all of these contracts and programs essentially exist in the same universe. Right. And all you need is a contract address and what function to call to like invoke that in your project. And that's like a superpower that somehow all these years in, like no one has really explored that deeply. So like that's what gets me excited. It's like if you love, I love base paint. It's a brilliant project. Like throw a base paint canvas in your Chonks wallet, and like maybe something opens up in our universe. Or all these guys hit me up all the time to like do collabs, and I'm like, the way to collab is like build something really cool, and we would love to work with you. And at the same time, there are all of these projects that just need people to make stuff on their platform. And like, we're just here to experiment. Like, we would love to work with anyone, whether that's like, an official like 11 a.m. Chonks trait, or it's like one of our community members who does a lot of work with us, this guy Nick's at ETH. He did an awesome project on hexagons. If you put a hexagon in your backpack and you go to the Chonks playground, there's a little hexagon like that. We flip it on its side and you can jump around on top of that hexagon, like platformer level thing in like that you couldn't do anywhere else. So that's the stuff that like gets me out of bed. And I just want to like expand this to an audience that's not crypto native and degen, and like, just explain like, draw some pixels, click this button, boom, you just minted a new shirt. And we can, do a profit share. You can sell it on the marketplace, and like all of a sudden, like you're part of this ecosystem now, similar to how you would do it in World of Warcraft, or how you would do it in, any other like kind of mainstream MMO, or, this is not ground that hasn't been walked before, but I don't think anyone in crypto has done it kind of to the level that we have.
So I think last week or the week before, we had Sam on from the Jito Foundation, and one of the things we were talking about is the sort of, I guess Josh asked the question, is like, are all the smart contracts that we ever need, have they already been developed? I think there's sort of a maybe a meme out of the Solana world that it's like, really you just need these six smart contracts. But clearly you're sort of, in the weeds here of development of these things. So I'm wondering if you can comment on the current state of smart contract development in crypto generally, or in Ethereum. Like, are people still pushing the boundaries of what's possible, or are we figured it all out and there's nothing more to do, just need to remix and match in new and interesting ways?
There's a handful of people that are still pushing. Like, it's not like 2021 where kind of every NFT project had like a new gimmick. But I think I tweeted about this a long time ago. Like, a bunch of people just like left those on the floor, and I just want to like pick them up and play with them. I think for the most part, I used to do a lot of like basic NFT contracts for projects, and like the complexity was kind of in the allow list functionality and how you wanted to do that and reward various communities. But like most of them exist either through like launch pads or through, Art Block Studio will get you a long way, or Highlight if you want to do generative stuff. But then when you want to do anything that's like remotely custom, you do have to dive into, I think the work that Zora has done with Uniswap pools and experimenting around that, nobody really talks about that because they're busy fighting over the ethics of meme coins. But like that stuff is super, super cool to me. And I haven't seen anybody really dive into Uniswap the way that they have, a handful of other people. So there's certainly more smart contracts to be written, but I think like the low hanging fruit has really been commoditized, which is great because then people can just like do what they want to do without needing to find somebody like me, which isn't great for my bank account, but it's great for doing interesting things on chain. And yeah, that like 6 smart contracts are all you need. I mean, they'll get you, it's like Apple, like everything Apple ships gets you like 70% of the way there. But if you want anything that is interesting beyond like the general consumer use case, like you go from Apple Health to a Whoop Band, or you go from like Apple Mail to Edison or Superhuman or whatever. So I think we're just kind of in the same like product pattern.
Amazing, man. So if people want to dive in and start clicking some buttons, what's the best link for us to tell them to go to?
Yeah, chonks.xyz. Everything you need is there. Definitely the safest place to buy a chunk, collect some traits, and have fun.
Amazing. Thanks for hopping on Backseats.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy.
See ya.